Okay guys, so this is the instructional video for reviewing multiplying fractions. I've been looking at some of your work over the past 2 weeks and I've noticed just a few errors that I want to go over with you to make sure you know how to do this. Okay, so this first one, 1/2 times 2. So another way of saying this is 1/2 taken 2 times. So visually, you can draw out 2 wholes, cut those in half, right? So I'm gonna take 1/2 one time, and I'm gonna take another half a second time, right? So I actually don't even need this hole over here, but I draw it just to make sure. So this is 1/2 taken 2 times. Another way of saying that is 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 whole. So mathematically, there's a couple different things you can do. So I've seen a couple errors where you guys have been multiplying the numerator times the whole number, but also the denominator times the whole number. That is not what you want to do. So another way of doing this mathematically is just multiplying the numerator times the whole number and putting it over the denominator of the fraction. So 1 times 2 equals 2 over 2, which is reduced to 1 whole, okay? So another way of doing that also is turning this whole number into a fraction. Well, if you do draw out 2 wholes, each one of these wholes is over 1, right? Is worth 1. So 2 of them would be 2 over 1. So another way of doing this mathematically is doing 1/2, which is your original fraction, and then turning this whole into 2 over 1, and then multiplying straight across. So 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2, which is equivalent to 1 whole. So when you multiply a fraction times a whole number, you can just multiply the numerator times the whole number and put it over the denominator, or you can turn that whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1. So this one right here is 4 times 1/2. So another way of saying this is 4 taken 1/2 of the time. So visually, I'm going to draw out 4 holes, and I'm going to use rectangles for this one. And I'm going to color in each one of those holes so I can show 4 holes. Now I'm going to take each one of those holes a half of a time. So I'm only going to color in a half. 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many halves do I have? I have 4 halves, which if I were to put those together or simplify this fraction, it would be 2 wholes. So one way of doing this mathematically is 4 times 1/2. Just multiply the whole number times the numerator. So 4 times 1 is 4. Put it over the denominator, 2, which equals 2 wholes. Okay, and so then if we follow that same pattern that we did up here, and we multiply the whole number by the fraction, but we turn the whole number into a fraction. So 4 as a whole number written as a fraction is 4 over 1 times 1/2. Then you can just multiply straight across. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. 4 halves simplified is 2. Sorry, you can't see that very well. Okay, so then this next one is really, really simple. Multiplying fractions is actually so much easier than adding fractions because you don't need like denominators. You can just multiply straight across. So visually what this looks like is you start off with 1 whole, or 1/2, sorry, because that's our first fraction. So I'm gonna color in 1/2, okay? So I'm taking 1/3 of 1/2. So I have my 1/2 and I cut that into thirds. Color in my 1/3, and if I take 1/3 of 1/2, it's this small section right up here. So my new answer is 1 out of what my new whole is, 6, okay? So mathematically, you just multiply straight across. So multiply the numerators, 1, multiply the denominators, 6. So 1/2 taken 1/3 of the time, or 1/2 times 1/3 is 1/6. All right, so a mixed number times a whole number. So one easy way to do this is to just turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. But there is another way you can do it by doing partial product. So you're gonna need, if you do that way, you're gonna need to do the 2 times the 3 and then the 1/2 times the 3 and then combine them. So 2 times 3 equals 6 and then 1/2 times 3 equals 3/2, okay? It's just gonna take a little bit longer because then you gotta convert and then add. So this is equivalent to 1 1/2, and then I add 6 plus 1 1/2, which equals 7 1/2. Got it? So that's one way to do it. That's a little complicated for me because then when you get into this, you're gonna have to do quite a bit of partial products and then switch some denominators and add them. So an easier way to do this is just flip this into an improper fraction, then multiply. So 2 1/2 is equivalent to an improper fraction of 5/2 because you multiply the denominator times the whole number. 2 times 2 is 4. Add the numerator, plus 1 equals 5, and put it over the denominator, yes? And then multiply that times 3. And remember, if you paid attention up here, you know you're just gonna multiply the numerator times the whole number. So 5 times 3 is 15. Put it over the denominator. And then to simplify that, divide 15 by 2, which equals 7. And there's 1 left over, so that turns into your numerator over the old denominator. All right, so then that leads into a mixed number times a mixed number. Now you can do this visually by using those area models. And if you've been watching the videos, you will have seen this work already. So you can break up 2 1/2 to 2 plus 1/2 times, break this up to 3 plus 1/2. And you're gonna multiply each one by itself. So this is 2 and this is 1/2, this is 3 and this is 1/2. In here is 3 times 2 equals 6. In here is 3 times 1/2, which equals 3/2. In this box, it's 2 times 1/2, which equals 2/2. And in this box, it's 1/2 times 1/2, which equals 1/4. Okay, so to find that final answer, you're gonna have to combine all of these. So 6 plus 3/2 plus 2/2 plus 1/4. All right, so you can't combine these because they don't have the same denominator. So you would have to find equivalent fractions to 3/2 and 2/2. So it's 6 plus, well, if I multiply this 2 times 2 to get 4, I have to multiply this 3 times 2, which equals 6. And then 2/2 with a denominator of 4 is just 4/4 plus 1/4 equals 6 and 11/4. And then obviously that is an improper fraction inside a mixed number, so you have to simplify. So 11/4 is 2 and 2/4, which is 2 1/2, combined with 6 is 8 and 1/2. Now that is pretty complicated. So a simplified version of doing that is flipping these into improper fractions, then multiplying across. So 2 1/2 flipped into an improper fraction is 5/2, and 3 1/2 flipped into an improper fraction is 7/2. Then I can just multiply straight across, and this is 35/4, and then do my division to find the mixed number. 4 can go into 35 8 times, which is 32. Subtract and get 3, which is 3/4. So this, 11/4. 4 can go into 11 2 times, which is 8. Subtract and get 3. So this is actually, 3/4. And this is 3/4. My simple subtraction is not working today. All right, so I hope that clears some stuff up for you guys. Take a look at this video, obviously, and then go ahead and do the review of multiplication fractions slide and submit it. You don't have to draw the pictures out. You don't even have to do the work on the slide. You can do the work somewhere else and just put the correct answer in, just so I know that you guys know how to do this.